Now it's time for another Board Game Brawl preview with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey now, my name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl, and today we're going to be taking a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter, or will be very soon, and that is Dreams of Dystopia from AP Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this video, then when the Kickstarter launches, I'm going to have a link at the bottom of your screen right now, and at the end of the video as well, and down in the description section of the video, again, when the Kickstarter launches, that is going to take you to the official Kickstarter project page. You can find out even more information about Dreams of Dystopia and hopefully consider backing the project. This is a deck building game. As most people know, I really enjoy deck building games, so I was intrigued to learn more about this one. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where there are divine and demonic forces who are battling back and forth for dominion of this newly scarred land. So it has this mix of like sort of old school fantasy together with the kind of futuristic, because there's guns and things like that. And so you are battling back and forth, and you're doing it with deck building, but it's deck building mixed with combat elements, almost similar to games like Magic the Gathering. So let's go ahead and take a brief look at how the game is played. Then we're going to come back, and I'll let you know what I think. Alright, I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of Dreams of Dystopia. This is a competitive deck building game for anywhere from 2 to 4 players. Now, what I have set up out here is for a 2-player game, but there's enough materials in the box for you to play a 3 or a 4-player game, and the rules are mostly the same. I'll just go ahead and say right now that the difference in the rules is that normally in a 2-player game, obviously you're attacking one-on-one. In a 3 or 4-player game, you are always going to be attacking to your left and defending to your right. Now, Dreams of Dystopia takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where players are taking control of either holy or demonic forces and battling each other out. So the first step that you need to do in the game is pick a master. Now, there are 6 masters in the game. You'll take turns picking the masters that you want. Now, the important thing about the masters and every other card that is in the game, except for the curse cards and the heroic deed cards, are that they are double-sided cards. One side of the card has the divine version of whatever the card is. So these are the master cards. So here we see Thanatos the Mender, and this is his holy or divine side. Divine side is the proper word. But if you flip him over to the other side, you have his Thanatos the Slayer, which is the demonic side. So at the start of the game, players are going to take turns picking masters and right then and there deciding which version they want to use, the divine side or the demonic side. Now, the other important thing about this game is that it does need opaque card sleeves, because what you're going to do is at the start of the game, you're going to put your starting deck and your master on whatever side you're choosing to use, the divine or the demonic side, put them in the sleeves. Whenever you purchase more cards during the course of the game in typical deck building fashion, you'll also be sleeving those as well. But going back to the masters, let's take a look at a few of their special abilities. So you have Thanatos the Slayer here. First off, up in the top, it'll be just, aside from the artwork and the font, it'll remind you which side, either divine or demonic, this is the divine side, or the demonic side it's on. Then down on the bottom, you have their life points. This is the goal of the game, is to knock out your opponent's master's life points, then you're going to win the game. Or if you're playing a multiplayer game, you're one step closer to victory. And the game comes with 20-sided dice, both red and blue. The red dice are going to be for keeping track of your life points. The blue dice are going to be for your fame, but we'll get back to that in a moment. So you'll put a die with that number on it onto your card at the start of the game, and then the masters have special abilities. So for instance, Thanatos the Slayer here says once at the end of your turn, you may take 1 life point from a master of your choice, but the ability changes depending on what side you have. So Thanatos the Mender says once at the end of your turn, you may have Thanatos gain 1 life point. So it's important for you to choose based on what ability you prefer. Now, I'm not going to say these names around. Geolocation the Sinner is actually the same on both sides. He just has 20 life points, which is a lot of life points, more than any of the other masters. So that's his special ability. You have Memnon the Infamous, and or his, of course, divine side, Memnon the Famed, and then Rosalgar the Righteous, or Rosalgar the Reckless, and so on. And the ones that I've chosen out here are already sleeved. I chose for this divine side. We have Mithrix, the Feeder of Minds, whose special ability is you draw an additional card in your opening hand and one additional card at the end of each of your turns. And then for my opponents, the last of the Masters, I chose the demonic side, and you have Athraxis the Greedy, who during each opponent's turn, if they would get an additional acquisition for the first time, which is a buy in this game, then they do not get it. So, and remember, you make this choice, put them in the sleeve, lock it in. Unless there's a card that has a special ability, there's no way that you're going to be able to change that for the rest of the game. Now, of course, you don't just have a master card, you also have a starting deck of cards. Like any deck building game, you start off with a starting deck of cards. Let's go through what each player is going to start with. The same types of cards, just the minions will be different depending on which faction you chose. So first you have Heroic Deed cards. Heroic Deed cards, you can play one Heroic Deed card per turn. You discard it into your discard pile, and that allows you to get a fame point. Fame points are what you're going to keep track of on the blue 20-sided die that comes for your character. And fame points are important because you need to have a minimum number of fame points in order to acquire the minions and weapons that are out on the battlefield. We'll get back to that in the supply. We'll get to that in a second. You start with 2 Heroic Deeds. Then you have 4 curse cards. Curse cards are just junk. They are purely taking up space and keeping you from drawing the better cards that you want. So you want to get rid of these through card special effects as soon as you can. And then you're going to have 4 minions. And remember that these are double-sided, so it's either going to be Minion of the Sun or Minion of the Moon, depending on whether you're divine or demonic. So just to look at the Minion of the Sun, who is divine, first you have this is just an S, meaning starter, but other cards in the supply, it would be the cost, the acquisition fame cost of the card up in the top corner. Then you have their attack rating, defense rating, and skill rating. Attack is what you're going to use to attack your opponent. Of course, defense is what you're going to use if your opponent is attacking you. In either case, it's a one-on-one match, and you deal any extra damage, even if you're defending, to your opponent's life points. Skill is what you need in order to wield weapon cards. There are weapon cards out in the supply as well, and I'll show you a few of those. And then some of the minions have special abilities. Now, if you have an ability, it actually says ability on the card, instead of playing this minion as either attacking or defending, you can instead play it for a special ability, putting it into your discard pile. This one says, purge this from your hand to recruit a minion immediately. You must have enough fame to do this. Purging being getting rid of it permanently from your deck. Alright, so on your turn, what you're going to do, you have a few different things that you can do. You can take most of your actions in any order that you like. Well, first off, at the start of the game, you're going to shuffle up your starting deck and draw 5 cards from that at the end of your... if you've never played a deck building game before, I suppose I should mention the basics of that. In a deck building game, you'll have your starting deck of cards, which are relatively weak compared to everything else you're trying to get. You are going to acquire better cards from the general supply. When you acquire a card, it goes into your discard pile, and in Dreams of Dystopia in particular, you need to immediately decide whether or not you are going to make it a divine, or I'm sorry, this is demonic or divine card. You can make it either, except that if you're going against your faction choice from your master, you need 2 extra fame for their loyalty cost. That's what this number is, their loyalty cost, in order to take that card. But once you make the decision, again, barring any card special effects in the future, it's locked in. You'll put that card into a sleeve with its appropriate shade showing up, and then you're going to put it into your discard pile. And then, as far as basic deck building goes, whenever your deck runs out of cards, you're going to draw 5 more new. You're going to discard all of the cards that you've used or not used, and then discard and draw 5 new ones at the start of your turn. When your draw pile runs out, you're going to shuffle up your discard pile, which may include the brand new, better cards that you've been purchasing. Make a new draw pile, and then draw from that, including if you're in the middle of needing to draw cards, you'll do that right away. So in that way, that's where the deck building part comes in. You're making your deck stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, during a typical turn of Dreams of Dystopia, and remember the golden rule is that cards can break the standard rules of the game, but what you have 4 different types of things you can do. One of those things is acquiring a card from the supply, which is the last thing I'll explain because that's also the last thing that you do all the time. The other 3 actions you can each do once, and you can do them in any order you like, but acquire must always be last. So the other actions are ability, and I mentioned that every one of the minions that you start off with in your deck, the Servants of the Sun and the Moon, start off with an ability on them, and some of the other cards that you can purchase from the supply also have abilities, and very simply, once per turn, you may discard one of those cards that has an ability from your hand in order to use its ability effect. So here's one of the cards that you can possibly acquire during the game, the Champion of the Sun or the Champion of the Moon, of course, and so his ability is draw 2, +2 ability, +1 combat, +1 acquisition, gain 3 life points. So that's if you discard him for his ability. Now, since he actually happens to have all 3 of the different types of stuff on his card, I'll also tell you that support is lets you discard during combat or defense in order to gain the ability. So his says +2 attack or +2 defense, gain life points equal to the damage inflicted to the opponent's master. And then combat is very simply, this is what he gets when he attacks or defends during combat, or this one particularly says upon attack, draw 1, +1 ability, +1 combat. So those are the different types of things you can see on character cards. That was a good one for me to choose to use as an example. So you can use one minion's ability during the game, or during your turn. The next type of thing you can do is, as I already mentioned, you can discard 1 heroic D card. Even if you have multiple heroic Ds, you can only discard 1, and therefore you'll gain 1 fame point. And the higher your threshold of fame points, the better cards you're going to be able to acquire during your acquisition step. And then the last type of action you can take on your turn, remember you can do these 3 things in any order you like, is combat. And combat is very simply declaring your attacker, so taking 1 of your minion cards from your hand and declaring that you are attacking with that minion, and then your opponent declares a blocking card from their hand that they're going to use, so you're comparing your attacking number to their blocking number. The difference is taken from either the attacker or defender, whoever has the higher number. So you have your damage step, your cleanup step, and then you're all done. And the last thing you do is acquire a card. So you'll look at the cards in the stock, see how much fame you actually have compared to their loyalty, and acquire 1 into your discard pile. Like I said, choosing the faction that you want it to belong to, with the limitation that it costs you extra fame to get an extra fame threshold in order to get one of an opposing faction. But because they all have different abilities, you may want to go for something on an opposing faction. It's entirely up to you if you can swing it. It goes into your discard pile, that's the deck building part, and then the game continues on until you have knocked out your opponent's life points. Now, before we wrap it up, I'll just show you some more of the cards that are in the general stock that I think might be interesting to you. So here, let me focus this in just a bit here. We have the Saintly Merchant, attack of 5, defense of 7, skill of 4, ability, which means you discard it for the ability, +2 acquisitions, which means you can gain extra cards during your turn, and you get to draw 1 card as well. It uses a support card. Upon block, opponent discards 1 card at random, and used as an attack during combat. Upon attack, +1 acquisition. And of course, it has its other side as well, the Sinister Merchant, which looks almost the same, but you see here, instead of +1 draw for its ability, you get +1 combat. And then upon attack, opponent discards a card at random. And then upon hit during combat, +1 acquisition. So things can change drastically depending on which side you choose to take. Then we'll take a look at the Dusk Transmogrifier. This is the demonic side. Ability, you may remove up to 3 cards in your hand and gain +1 ability. Combat, upon a hit, you may reverse up to 2 cards in your hand. This is what I was telling you about. There are cards that will let you flip cards around, so it can be very, very powerful. And on the other side, you can maybe reverse up to 3 cards in your hand, +1 ability for using this as an ability. And upon attack, you may reverse up to 1 card in your hand. Then there are cards that are weapons. So weapons are cards you can use to actually influence combat for the minions that are in play. So here you have the Hellish Arm Cannons, which give you +1 combat, but -1 defense. And this minion cannot be blocked, +1 combat, which means that you actually will gain an extra combat step. So I should not be calling this combat, that's +1 attack, if I've been saying that improperly. But if this is a Heavenly Arm Cannon, it's +1, -1 again, but this minion cannot be blocked, and +2 ability. So you see how different it can be on both sides. Let's take a look at the Cruel Twin Swords. The Cruel Twin Swords are +5 attack, no bump or subtraction from defense. This minion may make an additional attack. You lose 3 life points. But the Holy Twin Sword side, now you see even the stats over here are different. +2 attack, +4 defense. This minion may make an additional attack or block in additional time. So you have weapons, you have minions, some cards may force you to take more curses or heroic deeds, but hopefully you want to try and get rid of those. But even if you get curses, hopefully you're able to purge them from your deck. So in any event you're trying to use the special abilities of your master, keep their life points high, keep their fame high in order to get bigger and better cards in typical deck building fashion. Choose Demonic, choose Divine, swing at your opponent, and try to knock them out in this post-apocalyptic setting. That is Dreams of Dystopia. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. Now, one thing I want to point out, and for some reason I think I might have slipped my mind to mention that during the overview, that was a prototype copy of the game, so you can expect that some things might change in the final version, but it's really intriguing here. Now, I mentioned in my intro that I really enjoy deck building games, and I'm always on the lookout for ones that do things differently than others, and I really think that Dreams of Dystopia is way, way different than so many other types of deck building games that I've played. First and foremost, while there are deck building games that use different types of currency, it's very rare to see almost entirely new game modes within the context of the deck building game. A lot of times when you think of a game like Ascension, you technically have combat, but it's really just another type of currency that you have. You're just buying a different type of card and doing something else with it, whereas this is straight up combat, where you are actually taking one of the minions from your hand and with perhaps weapons, which is another interesting aspect. You're essentially equipping, at least temporarily, minions that you use with weapons, and then sending them to combat against your opponent, who has to block with their own minions. And then you have the idea of, if I go with the Magic the Gathering reference again, trample, where you're trying to take out your opponent's life points. So it's this intriguing, like, it's not points-based, it's more about taking out your opponent. So it's directly competitive and directly combative, I guess is the better word for that, which is something that you just don't see in a lot of deck building games, if at all. Now, there's also the aspect that, and I've talked about this before a lot in my videos, where I really enjoy and find intriguing the types of games that use cards for multiple different things. And you don't see that in deck building games a lot at all. It's usually a card does a thing. It's either going to just have an effect, give you more cards, or maybe it's only worth points, that's its only purpose and utility. But here you can use your minions for their ability, which is just discarding and giving their ability, or using them for combat. They have specific special stat boosts just for that, or the idea of being used as a support card for another minion going into combat, and having their different ratings that you can buff and such. Having a card be used for so many different things is just a really fascinating concept. I've always found it to be a fascinating concept, and really the entire game of Dreams of Dystopia is like that, because of the major conceit of the game is that you are either going to be divine or demonic, and it's not just a cosmetic thing. The cards can behave in slightly similar ways, but with significant differences. Like a card may say that on one side, on the divine side, you may be drawing extra cards, whereas on the demonic side, you're denying your opponent cards. Now, these are just, in some ways, just different styles of play, but isn't that a good thing too? You can actually customize the type of game that you want to play. You can customize it to your taste. So you can start off the game saying, okay, I'm picking this master, and I'm going to go with the divine side this time, because I think this is something new and interesting. So you have a lot of variety there. So in a sense, you have 12 masters of the game in the game instead of 6, and with all the different minions and all the different abilities that they have, the pool of cards is way, way bigger than you would initially think just from looking at what you have. Then when you add into the mix the weapons, and they're also double-sided, together with the interesting idea of how buying and purchasing works, where it's not just you play some very temporary money in order to get something, and it's just constantly trying to build up to the point where you can get enough money, but now it's building up your fame and being able to purchase cards of a certain fame level that you get to, and you're still building up, but now along the way you can purchase more and more and more and better cards, and then eventually get to those higher top tier cards, but you've been building up to that whole time. It doesn't just feel like you got lucky, it feels like you were working towards it, and there is the rewards of your work. So there are a lot of really interesting ideas at work here in Dreams of Dystopia. It really turns the deck building genre on its head in a lot of ways that I was not anticipating. And if you're as interested in it as I was while I was trying it out, you should definitely check out the Kickstarter project page. I'm going to have a link at the bottom of the screen, and in the description section of this video you can find out more information about Dreams of Dystopia and hopefully consider backing it. That is Dreams of Dystopia from AP Games. My name is Nick, this has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.